That night, under the soft glow of lanterns by the palace pond, Jiun and Kyung-hoon sat across from each other at a small table laid with their favorite dishes. The scent of grilled meat mingled with the light fragrance of lotus blossoms on the breeze, and the quiet hum of crickets filled the space between their gentle conversation. Ji-yun picked at a dumpling, then glanced up at Kyung-hoon, who was sipping from a small cup of plum wine. "Hey," Ji-yun said suddenly, "you've never told me your birthday." Kyung-hoon raised a brow, surprised by the question. "Haven't I?" Ji-yun shook his head, smiling slightly. "You know mine, thanks to Jun-ho. It's only fair I know yours." Kyung-hoon chuckled. "Fair enough. It's the 15th day of the 9th month. During the chrysanthemum bloom." Ji-yun nodded, repeating the date quietly. "I'll remember that. I'm going to do something really nice for you when the time comes." But the soft smile on Kyung-hoon's lips faded. His eyes dropped to the surface of the pond, rippling faintly with the wind. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, voice lowering. "Something serious." Ji-yun looked at him carefully, already sensing the shift in his tone. "I've decided to move forward with an aggressive strategy," Kyung-hoon said. "I'm reopening the investigation into the missing persons. I've already asked families to come forward, and soon, names will pour in." Ji-yun straightened. "That's dangerous." "I know." Kyung-hoon met his gaze. "And that's why I want you with me. If something happens, if I don't make it." "Don't say that," Ji-yun snapped, his voice shaking slightly. "You already said something like this before, and I hated hearing it then too." Kyung-hoon reached for his hand. "I'm scared, Ji-yun, for what might come. The kingdom isn't clean. If I'm not here to keep pushing, you'll need to hold the line." Ji-yun looked down at their joined hands. "I just want to live. With you. In peace. Not as a ruler. Not with burdens." Kyung-hoon smiled faintly. "We'll have that peace. Eventually." Before Ji-yun could respond, a servant appeared from the path behind the trees, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty, a messenger has arrived requesting an urgent audience." Kyung-hoon stood immediately, giving Ji-yun's hand one last squeeze. "I'll be back soon." In the royal hall, Tae-jin stood near one of the columns, his arms crossed and his face hard to read. When Kyung-hoon entered, the spy who posed as a messenger bowed and handed over a small sealed scroll. He was a spy tasked with following Jin-suk. The spy spoke quickly. "My lord, Jin-suk has grown more cautious. He sticks to his usual locations, his home, the palace, his plantations, and the Ministry of War. No unusual visitors, no trips to unapproved places." Kyung-hoon frowned. "We won't learn anything new from watching him. He definitely knows I am onto him, but maybe Lady Han will slip eventually." The spy bowed again and departed quietly, leaving the two princes in the dim room lit by hanging lanterns. Kyung-hoon turned to Tae-jin, noticing the tension in his brother's eyes. "You're bothered." Tae-jin raised an eyebrow. "I'm not." "You are. And it's about Min Seo." Tae-jin looked away quickly. "That obvious?" Kyung-hoon leaned against the nearest chair. "Pretty obvious. You've been tense since the wedding. And don't bother denying it, I don't get what you see in her, but well, my marriage to her won't last much longer. We'll dissolve the marriage. If you want to be with her after that, I'll support you." Tae-jin was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you, brother. But for now, I want to be by your side. I want to see you rebuild this kingdom the way you've dreamed. After that, I'll figure out the rest." Kyung-hoon smiled. "Then let's clean up this mess together." That night, the palace was cloaked in quiet. A soft breeze rustled the lanterns lining the corridors, and in the king's private quarters, Kyung-hoon lay sound asleep. The room, dimly lit by the faint glow of incense burners, slowly began to cloud with a thick, almost invisible smoke, sweet and heady. The scent slithered into his lungs with each breath, subtle at first, then overwhelming. Outside, crouched low and hidden near the ventilation pipe, Lady Han exhaled slowly through a long, lacquered pipe filled with powdered herbs and aphrodisiacs, illicit, expensive, and highly potent. She smirked to herself as the smoke curled into the air vent leading directly into the king's chambers. She had ordered the guards to take a break, telling them the princess consort was with the king and needed privacy. They didn't question her. Inside, Kyung-hoon stirred. His breath hitched. A strange heat began to flood his chest and limbs. His skin buzzed with hypersensitivity, and his mind swam with fragments, Ji-yun's voice, the feel of Ji-yun's lips on his, Ji-yun's laughter by the seaside. He muttered something incoherent and turned on the bed, his fingers curling into the sheets. Outside the chamber, Lady Han stood and turned to Min Seo, who was dressed in a delicate lace gown, the sheer fabric clinging to her body like a second skin. "Now," Lady Han whispered, her tone sharp. "Don't waste this. Go in and seal your future. That child needs to belong to the king." Min Seo hesitated, her fingers trembling slightly as she touched the ornate door handle. Her heart pounded, not out of excitement, but fear. Yet Lady Han's words echoed in her ears. If she didn't do this, she was as good as ruined. She entered. The room was thick with perfumed smoke and soft candlelight. Kyung-hoon lay on the bed, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. His eyes were half-lidded, his body glistening with sweat. Min Seo swallowed hard and stepped forward, each step uncertain. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She reached the side of the bed, knelt slightly, and slowly ran her hand along his chest. Kyung-hoon stirred again. "Jiun," he mumbled, his voice rough and tender. A smile tugged at his lips as he reached up to touch her cheek, his gaze clouded. He looked at her like she was someone else. Min Seo froze, but only for a second. She leaned closer, brushing her lips near his, her fingers sliding to the back of his neck. Just as their lips were about to meet, Kyung-hoon's eyes fluttered open fully, clearer, sharper. His body stiffened. His smile dropped. And in a blink, fury replaced confusion. "What the hell?" he rasped, quickly pushing her away. "Min Seo." Min Seo gasped as she stumbled back, caught off guard. I just wanted to be with you." "I'm your wife too," she said, her voice trembling but desperate. "Why do you only give yourself to Jialmi? I deserve you too." Kyung-hoon's jaw clenched. "Our marriage was never real. We agreed it was political. I told you we were ending it." She stepped closer again. "I can make you forget her. Just for tonight." "No," he snapped. "You don't understand. I'm not even in my right mind right now, and yet, I still know you're not him." Min Seo was confused. Not him? What was Kyung-hoon talking about? Kyung-hoon looked around, realizing the heat surging through him wasn't natural. His vision blurred again for a second and he shook his head violently. He staggered to his feet, forcing himself away from her. "I've been drugged," he muttered, breathing heavily. What did you do?" Min Seo reached for him again. "Please, just give me a chance." But Kyung-hoon shoved past her, half stumbling, half running through the corridor. He didn't care that his legs were unsteady beneath him, he just needed air, distance, sanity. And Ji-yun. Lady Han stood hidden in the shadows, watching with narrowed eyes. When she saw Kyung-hoon rush out of the room and down the hallway, she clenched her fists, her pipe falling from her hand and hitting the tiled floor with a sharp clink. Her lips curled in frustration. The plan had failed. Meanwhile, Ji-yun was curled up on his side, already drifting between sleep and wakefulness. The night was quiet, the faint chirping of crickets and the distant rustle of wind in the trees offering a rare peace. That peace shattered in an instant. The door burst open with a loud crack, slamming against the wall. Ji-Yun shot up, startled. His eyes widened when he saw Kyung-hoon, hair a tousled mess, eyes wild with something between desperation and fire, standing in the doorway. Kyung-hoon, what? But before he could finish, Kyung-hoon had crossed the room in a few long, determined strides and pulled Ji-Yun into a fierce kiss. Ji-Yun gasped against his lips, startled. The kiss was hot and unrelenting. It wasn't like Kyung-hoon's usual soft, careful touches. This was raw, hungry. Ji-Yun's hands instinctively grabbed his arms, holding on as Kyung-hoon deepened the kiss, like he was trying to convince himself Ji-Yun was real. Ji-Yun pulled back slightly, breathless. What happened to you? But Kyung-hoon didn't give him time to ask questions. He surged forward again, claiming Ji-Yun's lips with urgency, his hands holding Ji-Yun like he might shatter if he let go. They fell back onto the soft bedding, their bodies tangling, hearts pounding. Ji-Yun could feel the weight of everything pressing down, Kyung-hoon's fear, his anger, his desperation, but also his love. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the gauzy curtains, gently warming the silken sheets tangled around Ji-Yun and Kyung-hoon. Ji-Yun stirred first, blinking slowly as he rolled over to see Kyung-hoon still half asleep, an arm slung over his waist. He smirked and nudged him. "You're awake, aren't you?" Kyung-hoon groaned softly but didn't open his eyes. Ji-Yun grinned wider. "You were so rough last night, Your Majesty. I'm sore in places I didn't even know existed." Kyung-hoon's eyes flew open, his cheeks already turning crimson. "Don't start," he mumbled, clearly mortified. But Ji-Yun only laughed and kissed the tip of his nose. "Don't be shy. I liked it." His voice dropped to a playful whisper. "A lot." Kyung-hoon groaned again, this time dragging the sheets over his face. "You're impossible." Ji-Yun pulled the covers down and looked at him curiously. "But really, what happened last night? You were acting weird. Like, desperate." Kyung-hoon's smile faded as he propped himself up on an elbow. "Min Seo. She drugged me," Kyung-hoon said flatly. "I couldn't breathe right. My body felt hot. Heavy. And then Min Seo came in, wearing..." He cut himself off and shook his head, clearly still rattled. "I thought she was you at first. I was so out of it." Ji-Yun sat up, furious. "She what? She tried to seduce me. I pushed her away and ran out before I did something I'd regret." He turned to look at Ji-Yun seriously. "I came to you because I needed you. I needed to ground myself." Ji-Yun clenched his fists. "That woman's gone too far." "I know," Kyung-hoon said. "But we'll deal with her later." Ji-Yun scowled, but before he could say more, Kyung-hoon gently poked his side. "But today," he said, "I'm starting your training." Ji-Yun blinked. "Training? What kind of training?" The next thing Ji-Yun knew, he was standing in the royal training field, squinting against the morning sun in a pale pink hanbok and boots. His hair was tied up, his arms bare, and in his hands was a bow he barely knew how to hold. "You're serious," he said, eyes wide. Kyung-hoon, dressed in his black sparring gear, was already not amused. "Grip it properly. You're holding it like a maiden offering flowers." Ji-Yun rolled his eyes. "That's rude." Kyung-hoon narrowed his eyes. "Draw the bow." Ji-Yun tried. The string barely moved. His arms trembled. Kyung-hoon didn't laugh. He didn't even smirk. He walked over, fixed Ji-Yun's stance from behind, then leaned in close to his ear. "You won. Leave here," he said quietly. "Until you draw that bow." Ji-Yun swallowed hard and nodded. From that day, it became routine. Mornings were filled with the twang of arrows being fired, the grunts of effort as Ji-Yun trained with wooden swords, and the sharp commands of a king who showed no mercy. Kyung-hoon was relentless. He didn't care if Jiun was sore, exhausted, or moody. If Jiun missed a strike, he had to do it again. If he fell, he had to get up, faster. The guards and trainers who watched from afar were stunned. Isn't that the queen? She's training harder than the new recruits. Jiun complained, whined, even tried to bribe Kyung-hoon with kisses, but the king wouldn't bend. Lady Han was running out of options, and patience. Every trap she and Min Seo set for Kyung-hoon failed miserably. Whether it was sweet wine laced with herbs known to loosen inhibitions, or orchestrating moments for Min Seo to accidentally bump into him wearing nothing but a robe, Kyung-hoon saw through it all. Worse still, he didn't even entertain the idea. He was always alert, always 2 steps ahead. Even when Lady Han resorted to more dangerous measures, slipping a mild but slow-acting poison into Ji Yun's afternoon tea, he caught the attempt before the cup even left the tray. She had taken it upon herself to taste every single meal Ji Yun was served, and Lady Han had grown to loathe her with every failed scheme. Still, she wasn't one to give up. Not with her daughter's future hanging in the balance. With Min Seo's belly beginning to swell visibly, Lady Han grew desperate. She forced her daughter to bind her waist tight each day, lacing her hanbok until Min Seo could barely breathe. The poor girl winced and gasped every time she moved. Her complexion had turned pale and her steps slower with each passing week. Tae-jin noticed. He watched from a distance at first, then tried to approach her when he found her one morning, leaning against a pillar, clutching her side. Min Seo, he said gently, stepping toward her, are you? Don't come near her, Lady Han barked, appearing out of nowhere. She positioned herself between them like a lioness guarding her cub. Tae-jin's eyes narrowed. She's clearly not well. She's fine, Lady Han hissed. This is not your concern. Min Seo avoided Tae-jin's gaze, guilt and fear tangled in her eyes. Time passed. 6 months. Ji-yun, once delicate and soft-spoken, had transformed. His fingers now bore calluses from sword hilts and arrow feathers. His stance was firm. His gaze was sharp. Kyung-hoon watched proudly as Ji-yun took him down with swift, precise movements. That afternoon, they sat by the palace pond, breathing in the stillness that followed their morning training. I'm so proud of you, Ji-yun, he said. Why are you doing all this for me? Kyung-hoon turned to him. This is not only for you. I want to build a kingdom that lasts. A place of justice. Of prosperity. Ji-yun nodded slowly, his gaze dropping to the rippling water. Then I want to be by your side when that dream becomes real. Kyung-hoon reached for his hand and squeezed it, the silence between them turning warm. But not everyone shared their peace. That same evening, Kyung-hoon summoned Min Seo and calmly handed her the divorce scroll. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. Then she exploded. No, she screamed, flinging the paper across the room. I will not sign it. Kyung-hoon didn't flinch. This marriage was a formality. It's time to let go. Min Seo sobbed, collapsing to the floor. But he turned and walked away. Lady Han was livid. That night, cloaked in black and with her heart pounding, she made her way to Jin Suk's private residence. She was done trying to handle it all on her own. She needed bigger power behind her. He didn't welcome her kindly. What are you doing here? Jin Suk demanded. Lady Han got straight to the point. Your daughter is pregnant. Jin Suk froze. What? She's been hiding it. I tried to pin the child on Kyung-hoon, but he won't touch her. And now he wants a divorce. If that child is born, your plan crumbles. Jin Suk staggered back a step, furious. You were supposed to protect her. But you weren't able to let me be with her, she snapped, bitter. You left me and raised her with lies. If I had been in her life, this wouldn't have happened. You were an embarrassment, Jin Suk hissed. Lady Han's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Not now. There's something else, she said. You need to hear this. Jiun folded his arms, impatient. Jialmi, the queen, is not a woman, she said slowly. Jiun's face contorted. What? How can you say something so stupid? Lady Han leaned closer. I'm telling you. He's a man, and he's been hiding in plain sight, fooling everyone. Jiun's silence was followed by a dark, guttural laugh as he remembered the assassin he murdered. So that's what that fool meant. Well, he said slowly, a grin spreading across his face. So the great Kyung-hoon sits on the throne, with a crown on his head and a man on his lap. Lady Han looked uneasy, but Jiun was already walking away. The Yin Empire is on their way, he said, his voice laced with venom. By the time they arrive, this kingdom will be too weak to fight back. Let's see how long their little fairy tale lasts. Unbeknownst to them both, a figure stood in the shadows behind the thin curtain, Min Seo. And now she stood trembling, one hand over her belly, the other clamped tightly over her mouth as these shocking information sank in. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel for more episodes.